So hi, my name is Adam Carl. I don't think I've met many of you yet. I work in Dr. Mary Kay O'Rourke's Environmental Health Research Lab, or the Hopi Environmental Project is what we go by. So to start, I actually can't include a lot of the data I have found in my research just because of tribal conflicts, and we haven't got approval until this Friday. We have our community advisory board meeting, so I'll just give you a rundown of all the individual projects I have that I do. So to start off, the Hopi Reservation is located in northeastern Arizona, spanning over 1.5 million acres. There are currently 13 formal villages, and land is allocated through clan ownership. They are currently a matriarchal society, and there's an average density of 3 people per square mile. So to begin, we collect various personal and environmental samples, such as soil, ash, dust, water, urine, and air. So we have community members working as research technicians up in the Hopi lands, and those samples come back down here to the University of Arizona, and that's where I do all of the work from there. I actually have a 360 view perspective on this entire environmental health project. So to begin, last summer my project was centered around working out in the field and collecting samples, as well as delivering individual participant results. I've also processed the samples down here in our lab at the Medical Research Building. So as you look to the bottom left on your side, just keep this picture in mind, as this is part of one of my projects, my first Uber project actually that I did, which is what I'll go into. So the first thing, my PI, when she approached me, she asked me, could you help me develop a template that we could use to give back these individual participant results, because there are cultural barriers as well as religious barriers that we cannot cross. So that's when I took into account, okay, we were working, this is when the public health side came in. I'm not a public health major, but I did realize that all of the research does actually surround public health in a sense. So the first thing I did was, I don't know what happened to the T, was there? But so I'll just talk about my experience. So getting back to individual participant results, I went back to 30 households last summer. I spent an average about an hour to an hour and a half with each individual. And I basically went over all of the personal measurements, so that's including all the dietary, nutrition, and everything in that aspect, as well as the environmental sampling. What was found, all the toxins, metals, metalloids in the soil, ash, dust, and water, as well as the air samples. So when I would visit each of these households, I could feel the trust in them when I would go in the home. They knew we actually cared about them, as we did take into consideration all the cultural aspects into this template. They would offer me a cup of coffee, they would talk to me about my day, ask me what I was doing, as well as they became very engaged. They became very concerned. They started worrying about their family members who were living 50 miles away. They're asking, are they facing this type of a conflict as well, or are they exposed to these toxins? And then that's when I started to learn from this experience and learned that it's a way that you present the information to these individuals, and that there was a lot of misinterpretations in the past, and now I was able to understand those misinterpretations now and make a better way to approach those. So my next project that I did this past semester was running a quantitative risk assessment on the inhalation of uranium on Hopi lands. So information is very limited on uranium in this area. I had to dive through research from China, past studies, all the literature to find a model to set this up. So basically, in all of our samples, such as the soil, dust, ash, there was elevated concentrations of uranium-235. And it's been overlooked in our project, and I thought, okay, I'll run a risk assessment to see what the likelihood of these individuals to actually be exposed enough to get cancer in their lifetime. And so I ran a quantitative risk assessment for the summer months and the winter months. And I can tell you, because I did get approval for this, that at both times, each household was at risk, extremely at risk of developing cancer. So my next project that I'm actually working on this summer is I'm going to narrow it down to an activity-based exposure to particulate matter 2.5 and the pollution in the air. So I'm actually going to be collecting my field data for this in the coming weeks out on the Hopi Reservation, so I'll be going back up and delivering results as well. So the individuals, basically, as you look in the picture, They cook over a fire and they make their traditional bread, and basically what I'm going to do is see the amount of particulate matter and all the pollutants they're exposed to as they're sitting there while they're doing this type of cooking. So although I haven't got approval to share any other type of information with my, besides that, but I'm going to be using 3 different types of, they call it piki homes, so where they make the type of food, so there are different structures. There's really old traditional ones, there's modern ones, and there's super modern day ones. So we're going to go ahead and assess their exposure in each of those households. But other than that, I really wish there was more I could share with you besides all my findings, but these are just like what the projects I have done, and I basically do a lot in the lab, so it's not really a lot. I can narrow it down for you guys, but my part is basically sampling, tracking the samples, collecting the samples, delivering results. And, yeah. So thank you.